I'm Hyman Darling. I'm Chair of the Estate Planning Elder Law Department at Bacon Wilson. I'm going to go into the options that are available and some of the important decisions you should think about before remarrying or marrying for the first time. The primary issue that we need to think about is whether you're going to have a prenuptial agreement. The prenuptial agreement is an important document because it determines what amount of money you need to leave to your spouse if you die or if the marriage terminates. It's basically negotiating your divorce settlement before you get married. But it's important to consider, especially if you've been married before and it either was of significant detriment to you at that time and you don't want to go through that issue again. So it's important to consider whether you're going to have one. Other important decisions that you should think about are health insurance issues. Sometimes a person has obtained a health insurance from their deceased spouse, and when you remarry, you lose the right to maintain that benefit of health insurance. So it's an important consideration. Also, whether you're going to pick up health insurance from the spouse that you're marrying is a decision that you have to find out whether you are able to get that possible insurance coverage in the future. Similarly, the issue of Social Security benefits. You might have been receiving Social Security benefits from yourself or your deceased or your divorced spouse, and if you remarry, you've got to find out what benefits you might get from the spouse that you've remarried. The issue of beneficiaries on life insurance, annuities, retirement plans has to be discussed, because once you marry, some of the beneficiaries of retirement plans are governed by federal law, and your spouse cannot inherit you from those benefits. So it's important to consider what you're going to do. The issue of wills is very important. In most states, a spouse has a right to waive the will and take a forced share. If you do not have a prenuptial agreement, you might try to cut out your spouse, but he or she might have the right to force an estate election at that point in time when you pass away and merely get a share without contesting the will. The other big issue that has to be thought about when getting married or remarried is long-term care. If you have assets, you have a right to maintain those assets during your lifetime, and they are yours, and they may have to be spent for long-term care. Even if you remarry and assets are in your name alone, and even if you have a prenuptial agreement, your assets may have to be spent for your institutionalized spouse if he or she needs to go into an institution and they have spent down their assets. So Medicaid doesn't care in most states whether you have a prenuptial agreement. An agreement might be valid for distribution of assets in the event of divorce or death, but for long-term care issues, once you are married, all of your assets are considered marital assets, and they are grouped together with your spouse, whether or not he or she has assets or not and has spent them or not in a long-term care facility. So your assets may be at risk if you are to get remarried. The other issues that have to be discussed are who's going to be named on your documents. Once you get married, your spouse might think that he or she should be your health care proxy decision maker, your power of attorney, your executor, your trustee, and you need to find out whether or not that's really the right thing to do. You might still prefer to have a child or an independent person, such as a trusted advisor, serve for you in the event of your death or incapacity. So it's important to discuss these things, all these issues with your spouse or proposed spouse before you get married to make sure that you are in sync and that there's not going to be problems with that person once you remarry. I'm Hyman Darling, Chair of the Estate Planning Elder Law Department at Bacon Wilson. If you are thinking or considering marrying or remarrying, it is very important to consider all of the situations that might occur that might make your marriage good, bad, or indifferent. These should be discussed and decided before remarriage. If we can help in any way with advising you, counseling you, please do not hesitate to contact us.